A little over a year ago, we got our first look at Persona 4 Revival. Not much, just a brief teaser telling us the game exists. 12 months pass and we finally have a proper trailer to sink our teeth into. Gameplay, cutscenes, music, dialogue, there's a lot to talk about, so let's not waste any more time. These are my thoughts on the pre-order trailer for Persona 4 Revival. The trailer opens up with a brief shot of an in-engine cutscene. I believe Persona 5 Royal and Strikers had a couple of these, but they stood out in Reload because they actually replaced some of the hand-drawn cutscenes from the original. While some of these look arguably better than their PS2 counterparts, others lack the visual flair and impact that you could only get with the hand-drawn stuff. The scene where the protagonist awakens to his persona is a prime example of this. It just doesn't hit as hard as it did back in 2006. This time around, they seem to have a better idea of which scenes they can afford to render in engine and which are just too important for anything less than that typical anime style, as we catch a glimpse of the awakening later in the trailer and it's fully hand drawn. Regardless, the in-engine stuff here does look nice, I have no complaints. The next thing we see is this conversation from very early in the game, and there's a few things to touch on here. For positives, we've got a unique camera angle. Most conversations in Persona have your typical downward-facing camera angle that captures the whole scene, including this same cutscene from the original game. Switching it up like this serves not only as a nice visual change, but as an indicator that, hey, this conversation is particularly important, so you want to pay attention. This is also our first look at the UI. I really like the day, time, and weather widget in the top right. The font in particular reminds me of something I've seen on the news, a small bit of TV imagery that stays on your screen for the whole game. The text box also looks clean. I love the colour, the shape, it's great. What's not so great are the character portraits. If you've seen any discourse surrounding this trailer, it's about the portraits. Everyone agrees they look flat, severely lacking in shading and highlights, along with just being less detailed than the originals. Some of these look really unfinished. I'd be surprised they're letting us see them if it wasn't an intentional art style. However, everyone also agrees that it is very intentional. The general consensus is that they're trying to replicate some of the promotional material for the original game and Golden, which, fair enough, that artwork is good in its own right. But the thing is, those artworks are only meant to be viewed a few times for a few minutes at most. This is on your screen for, let's say, 50 of the 70 hours you'll spend playing this game. And in that context, I think it could be better. Like, look at this. The portrait isn't even consistent with the rest of the artwork in its own game, let alone the character model right next to it. This is the one thing in this trailer that I, and pretty much everyone else, wasn't 100% satisfied with. That being said, the portraits aren't bad, they won't ruin the game if it ships like this, but I hope they get a touch up before release. One last comment on the visuals, the TV world seems to apply a chromatic aberration filter along the edges of the screen. It's no scanline filter, but it does work to, again, reinforce that television imagery that's so important to this game. Nice little detail. Like Reload before it, Revival replaces some of the fixed camera angles in free roam with your typical third-person perspective. I think this is a double-edged sword. On one hand, the protagonist just looks massive compared to the environment. I'm not sure why this wasn't an issue in Reload, but having the camera further away would probably fix it, or at least make it less noticeable. But on the other hand, the close camera does work to better immerse you in the environment, where before you observed from above, now you're seeing things from the protagonist's perspective. You're living in Inaba. So overall, I think the new camera works, and I doubt I'll notice the weird sizing issue when I'm the one playing. It's just more obvious in this trailer because I can pause and take everything in properly. Now this shot stood out to me. This interaction is fully voiced now, which is nice to see, but more importantly, he's sat in Igor's spot. The cheeky bugger. Not only is it nice that we actually get to watch these characters interact, but they're also giving the protagonist more of that Chad personality the fandom loves so much. Yu Narukami is arguably the most extroverted protagonist in the modern trilogy. Not a huge achievement considering his only competition is Criminal who's trying to blend in and Edgelord, but it helps him stand out and I just can't wait to see more of it. That first playthrough is going to be so much fun. Another new cutscene, new in air quotes, is this shot of Chie from later in the trailer. This is the scene where she confronts her shadow, and in the original game was another case of reading dialogue with a static camera. Here, it's fully animated, giving this important character moment more weight, putting it more in line with the awakenings from Persona 5. I know people typically shudder when these remakes are compared to that game, but I promise in this instance, it's a good thing. The last thing to talk about is the combat. The final quarter of the trailer focuses entirely on it, starting with a few generic clips. The first unique thing we see is the protagonist blocking an attack during exploration? Now, I imagine this is going to be pretty broken in practice, basically a free advantage for every battle. Reload had something similar, but you unlocked it way later in the game if I remember right. Same with Persona 5. Here, it's being shown in the second dungeon of the game, so it's fair to assume you'll have this for the entire game, or you'll unlock it during the second arc at the latest. Again, fairly broken. I'm not too mad about this though. I think it's actually a pretty cool mechanic, especially in the context of Persona 4. The modern port of Persona 4 Golden on PS4 and PS5 had a fairly common bug where the hitboxes of shadows in the dungeon just wouldn't activate. It occurred at random and essentially meant you had to let the shadow attack you if you wanted to fight, or avoid the shadow entirely and miss out on the XP. So in the context of the original mechanic being broken on a functional level, having the odds so heavily in our favor now feels really cool. Like the dev saying, yeah, we hear you. This thing that gave you such a hard time? Take your revenge. We also get a proper look at the battle UI here. The actions are now tied to the face buttons, which we all expected and is a good thing. It keeps the pace up compared to scrolling through a menu. Not sure I'm a fan of the dial in the middle though. I understand it's another bit of TV imagery, but I think the presence of that handhold implies the ability to spin the wheel. On top of that, I think it's just too overt, like they're smacking us over the head with the imagery instead of implying it like we saw with the time and day widget and the chromatic aberration from earlier. You could remove that handhold and keep the circle with the details along the edges, and you get the same idea across without making it so blatantly obvious. We also see the new primetime mechanic in action. According to the website, primetime activates when this blue gauge fills up. Once that happens, you get 4 consecutive attacks, skills like magic and physical abilities cost nothing, enemy resistances are ignored, and you can baton pass as much as you like. In writing alone, this looks to be far more broken than Reload's theurgy ended up being in practice. The website even says there are no downsides, so make sure you always use it. That last line there hopefully implies that you need to use it the moment the meter fills, else it dissipates and you have to build it back up. This would at least avoid the balancing issue of saving it for bosses, but if Reload is anything to go by, this won't be the case. After your 4 actions, you'll be greeted with a series finale. Again, I think the relation to television might be too in your face with this, but at least here it makes more sense. As the final attack in a series of actions, it's the series finale. This is also where the follow-up attacks from the original come into play, which is a good change to be fair. You're now actively triggering the thing instead of it just being random chance. I think that's about everything for the trailer. Oh, the music, of course. I like it a lot. I do wonder where it'll play. Persona 4 already has 2 battle themes, Reach Out to the Truth and Time to Make History, so my best guess is that it'll be the opening theme, the full moon, full life of Persona 4. A shame, because it's such a high energy track that would fit perfectly in battle, but hey, regardless, the song slaps and I can't wait for its release. The same goes for the game itself, which surprises me. For context, I'm not the biggest fan of Reload. I adored Persona 3 Fez to such a degree that to stand any chance of surpassing it, the remake had to be perfect. Unfortunately it wasn't, and Reload simply became another addition to the endless debate of which Persona 3 should you play, which Persona 3 is the best, and that's a damn shame. With Revival, however, there are 2 key factors contributing to my optimism. For one, I'm just nowhere near as married to Persona 4 as I am to Persona 3. Don't get me wrong, I love Persona 4. The order in which I rank it and 5 compared to 3 is constantly shifting, but on the days where I say it's my least favourite of the modern trilogy, that's still in my top 5 games of all time. I love Persona 4, but I'm not attached to it like I am to 3, so I'm more open to a less than faithful remake. That being said, I think this will be a faithful remake, and that leads us on to factor number 2. Persona 4 and Persona 4 Golden are much closer to the modern image of Persona than 3 ever was. 4 is closer to 5, go figure. Where Persona 3 had battle tactics, modern Persona has full player control. Where 3 had a muted colour palette and artistically creative cutscenes, modern Persona is pretty. Old Persona had fixed camera angles, modern is typical third person, and on, and on, and on. And the original Persona 4 already has the latter of all of these. So busted battle mechanics aside, I have a hunch that Revival will be less of a fundamentally different experience and more of a refined one. Expanded and enhanced. Revived. And unless it comes out that they've used generative AI in the making of this one too, I'm of the mind that February 18th, 2027 can't come soon enough. 10 days before my birthday, isn't that just perfect? I eagerly await the game's arrival, and I'm sure I'll be streaming it when the time comes, same as I did with Reload. Until then, thank you very much for watching, have a good rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week. Take care, goodbye.